Welcome back. In this video, we are going to be talking about the power of microdosing. So far, we've learned that microdosing can be beneficial in PTSD and trauma recovery. We've learned that it can be beneficial for people with depression and anxiety. It's also been known to be beneficial for people with ADHD and OCD. It's also helped people boost their creativity, have better focus and concentration, and increased energy levels and boosted mood overall. But you also might be surprised to hear that it's also helped people who are on the autism spectrum. It's also helped people with chronic pain, with migraines, and also PMS. It's quite a remarkable substance and has a lot of different benefits for a lot of different things. And the best part about it is that it's all natural. The approach of microdosing can have profound benefits in trauma recovery. Now, in this video, we're going to take a look at what some of those benefits are. These benefits have all been people who have self-reported. I have also achieved most of these benefits, plus some more that I'm going to talk to you about in a different video when I talk about my experience. In this video, I'm just going over some of the benefits that people have reported. So one of those benefits is for emotional release. And like I've explained in the last video when we were kind of talking about some of the myths, and we were talking about how it can be dangerous if you're not fully educated on psilocybin before taking it. And the emotional release that I'm talking about is when I mentioned before about how psilocybin tends to bring things to the surface. So it will bring the past to the present. And the reason it does that is so that you can process it and release it. That's how it works with emotional release. It kind of brings up a curiosity about the symptoms and the things that people with trauma and PTSD are experiencing. And when we are able to view those symptoms with curiosity rather than dread, it makes it easier to process them and release it. We know that many people suppress their emotions. A lot of people don't want to deal with things and they don't want those things coming to the surface. And I know that from personal experience because I've explained in previous videos, not in this series, but in previous videos, how I got to have PTSD. And that was by stuffing everything into a box so that I could just put it away and hopefully never worry about it again. Psilocybin tends to open up that box for you. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, as long as you're aware that that's what's going to happen. It can help reduce anxiety. And when I'm talking about anxiety here, I'm talking specifically about trauma and PTSD recovery. And how it helps us reduce our anxiety is by bringing up those things to the surface. And like I mentioned, it also it helps us view those things and some of our symptoms with curiosity rather than with fear and dread. And when we become curious about these things, they tend to lose their power over us. And when they start losing their power over us, it will reduce our anxiety. It's known to enhance our mood. And this is helpful for anybody who's microdosing for any reason. But for trauma recovery, when it enhances our mood, it's helpful because it can help us more easily move through the recovery process. It can improve our connections. And this isn't just talking about connections with other people, it's talking about connections in general, connections with everything, to other people, to nature, to the sky, the stars, the moon, the sun, everything in the universe. We are all connected, and psilocybin really, really helps us to see that and feel that. And when we can feel a sense of connection with everything, it helps us feel less alone and we'll tend to isolate ourselves a little bit less when we feel connected to everything. And that's how it can help in trauma recovery. I'll give you a quick example of that feeling of connectedness. For me, I don't like winter. I'm not a winter person. I don't like the cold and I don't like the snow, and I could go on and complain about it forever, but I won't. Ever since I've been microdosing, I have noticed that I feel differently about winter. And I mean, I still don't like the cold, don't get me wrong, but because of that feeling of being connected with everything around me, I'm now able to see winter as a necessity, and I understand why it needs to happen. And because of that, I can tolerate it a lot better. So yeah, it will help improve your connection with the entire world around you. Microdosing psilocybin also can help with clarity in thinking. And it helps because it's opening up those new neural pathways in the brain. And when we're opening up new neural pathways, it helps us to think more clearly and also more deeply about the world around us. Microdosing psilocybin has also been known to increase empathy. This can help us understand emotional wounds. And this isn't just having empathy for other people, but it's also being able to have that empathy for yourself. Self-compassion is one of the biggest things in trauma recovery. You can't recover without it. So having that empathy for other people and yourself included is a wonderful tool for helping move through the recovery process. Microdosing psilocybin also can put you on the path for personal growth. What I mean by this is that it puts you on a path of self-discovery. And when we are able to dive into self-discovery and understand who we are, it helps with our personal growth. This will help us move beyond trauma. And if you're wondering what I mean by that personal growth, it's feeling that connectedness to everybody and everything around you. And it's learning about yourself and your connections to all of those things that are around you. It's being able to view those symptoms with curiosity rather than dread. These things all lead us to personal growth. Now, I've mentioned this one before. Microdosing can lead to a reduction in substance use. And I don't think I need to go over all of this again, but because I gave you my own personal example as well, as people self-reporting that after they started microdosing, they had no desire to have a drink or use any recreational substances that they might have been using before. And I gave you that example about myself with the wine. Since I've been microdosing, I have no desire to have a glass of wine. Microdosing psilocybin has also been known to lead to a decrease in our trigger responses. Now, when you have PTSD and you get triggered, it happens really fast. And I'm sure it happens really fast if you don't have PTSD as well. But just keep in mind when I say that, it's not that I'm only focusing on that, but that's how it helped me. So that's kind of why I'm talking about it in that way. So when we talk about the trigger responses, they happen so fast. And if you're anything like me, it just happens like in a blink of an eye. Something happens, you get triggered, the reaction happens before you even have a second to think about it. And it oftentimes, especially, well, for me anyways, leads to panic attacks. Since I started microdosing psilocybin, that's all changed. Because the psilocybin has made me curious about my symptoms rather than viewing them through that lens of fear and dread, it's also changed the way I respond to triggers. Something has happened, and I'm not sure exactly what, but when I get triggered now, it's almost like it comes in slow motion. It's like there's a couple of seconds of a delay. So I can be triggered, and rather than just immediately going into that panic attack, it's kind of like there's a a second or two of a pause where I'm able to know what's happening. This has never happened to me before. It only happened after I started microdosing psilocybin. When that pause happens, I'm able to look at the situation and say to myself, you're only triggered. This isn't danger. And when I am able to do that, it prevents those panic attacks from happening. I still get triggered, don't get me wrong. It's just that it's changed the way I respond to those triggers. Now, I'm not the only one who's noticed this. There was one time where I was in my psychologist's office and something triggered me, and I didn't go full-blown panic attack right away. And he even noticed that. And I remember he looked at me and he said, what's happening? It's like slow motion, because that's exactly what it felt like as well. So it's actually amazing that that happens. And I am so grateful that I no longer react to the triggers the way that I used to. This has been one of my biggest breakthroughs in my recovery, and it only happened because I was microdosing psilocybin. Microdosing psilocybin can also help us with self-acceptance. This is a big one, and it goes hand in hand with that personal growth. Feeling that connectedness with everybody and the world around us, it helps us to, it just helps foster those feelings of self-acceptance. So like I said earlier, when we are able to see that we are connected to everything, it helps us feel less isolated. And when we are feeling less isolated and alone, it's a lot easier to have that self-acceptance. It helps us to realize through feeling connected with everybody that everybody in the world experiences trauma from time to time, and that it's not just us. And when we're able to see other people that way, it makes it a lot easier to accept ourselves for who we are. All right, I hope that explaining some of these benefits that come from microdosing have helped you to understand just how powerful it is. It truly is an amazing and remarkable substance, and I know that I wouldn't be where I am in the recovery process today without it. And with that being said, we're going to end here and go right into the next video where we're going to start talking about the protocols for microdosing. I look forward to seeing you there.